Yo guys, what's up? Shadow here, and welcome to another episode of Space Engineers. And if I'm sounding a bit defeated, then oh, you cannot imagine. You cannot imagine. I had a lot of problems with this episode. Not with the video. The video is fine. The audio is fucked. So if you cannot tell, this the voice that I'm recording right now, it's actually not the original that I recorded during this video. Because, to be fair, I still don't know if it sounds good right now, but it sounds better than it did. After I was finished recording this episode, I did what I normally do. I went, like, in the evening after the recording, just before I go to bed. I mostly do my editing, if I do any editing, but you know what I mean. I'll start the rendering process and whatnot. And, well, the audio was fucked up, like completely fucked up.
Energy low.
It sounded like I was sitting away like 5 meters from the microphone for no apparent reason. And also, it sounded very strange because it cut me off like mid-sentence sometimes. So half of the time you wouldn't even hear what I was saying. And I think the reason for that is because of a Windows update. Because the episode that I recorded before this Space Engineers episode, I think it was a Cyberpunk episode, I believe. That sounded fine. That was the day before. That sounded perfectly fine like it always does. And from after the Windows update, the audio was fucked up completely. And, you know, every once in a while I have it that after Windows update I have to kind of reconfigure my audio setup because it loses, like, which microphone is the default microphone, etc. But this time around something happened and I don't know exactly what. First, after I noticed that the audio was shit, the first thing that I noticed was that the noise gate filter that I have on my OBS, which essentially is there to filter out like noises that only take up that are only of a certain noise level. So it will the microphone essentially only activates if a certain noise threshold is hit. And then it records everything, and then once it's getting quieter again, it cuts off the mic completely. This kind of eliminates a lot of background noise. You know, for example, if our puppy is barking somewhere, that is not as loud that it would pick up with this noise gate. So that was the first thing that was fucked up, because now, with the noise gate that I had normally set up, now it cuts out half of my freaking voice, which is definitely not right. And then the second thing I noticed is that normally when I record, you don't actually hear the fan in the background. That gets filtered out. And I think, I cannot confirm this 100%, but the problem is because I configured it a long time ago, but I was pretty sure that I had a noise cancelling effect somewhere that filters out like very steady monotone noises, like let's say a fan from just an ordinary fan, or maybe, you know, if your computer has a monotone buzz to it, that kind of stuff gets filtered out. And I'm pretty sure there was in Windows there was actually a noise cancelling, noise filtering thing, and I have the feeling after the Windows update it wasn't there anymore. That's why everything sounded shit all of a sudden. So now I'm actually using a noise cancelling filter in OBS, but to me it still doesn't sound like it sounded before, which is really infuriating, in case you couldn't tell. But yeah, anyways, sorry to bother you with my technical problems, but let's get back to the episode here. So as you can see, I actually started here to set up a new system for our dock, which actually was suggested in the comments. That was a very good suggestion. To instead use lights, we should use LCD screens, which has the advantage, as you can see, that if one of the screens is turned off, it doesn't still shine in the color that we defined. In this case, we define the background color of the LCD screen. The only thing that you still see is that the offline text when you turn off the LCD, but that's in comparison to what we had before, that's like a minor thing, right? As you can see, yeah, there's offline written on the screen when you turn it off, but anyway, yeah. So the next thing that we're working on is essentially our battery compartment, which at this point is actually already getting quite a lot of solar energy from our double solar panel thingy. And also, you can see there in the distance the space pirate ruins. That's something we're probably going to try and visit next time on the next episode. This is going to be our goal, essentially, to load up our spaceship here with enough hydrogen that we can go over there and visit, and then basically just have to go back to our ship to refill our hydrogen, our oxygen, and our energy, so we don't have to travel back and forth like on the whole, you know. The problem is, I just realized that basically the hydrogen engines on the ship are constantly burning hydrogen, or ice for that matter as well. And the main reason for that is if it's docked onto our docking station, what happens is that essentially it uses the hydrogen engines to also try to basically pump the batteries full of energy. So it's consistently draining hydrogen from our ship. So what I now am just in the process of doing is I'm setting up a toggle for all the hydrogen thrusters, and also a toggle for essentially the hydrogen engines that I can turn them off completely when we're docked, so that they won't start draining into our main system, because our solar panels should be able to handle the output that our main system needs on their own. So yeah, that's the thing we're on right now. And it took me actually a while to figure this out exactly what was draining it. Because at first I thought it was just the hydrogen engines that were still running and try to hold the ship in place, because it wiggles a little bit, you know, when even if you're in space and you just stop, it kind of wiggles a little bit because of the pistons. Yeah, that's just a thing in space engineers. Whenever pistons or hinges are involved, then basically standing still is a challenge, more or less. But yeah, I think at this point I figured out pretty much that, yeah, the hydrogen power generators, that we need to group these together, and then so we can turn these off so they will stop draining our hydrogen supply. And then obviously we'll have to fill up the hydrogen supply again, because at this point it's, I think, at 26%. Which I think, if it is correct math right here, that means one of the hydrogen large hydrogen tanks is filled, essentially half is on 50%, and the other one is empty, kinda, something like that. But yeah, that was also a problem that we encountered. But yeah, for the rest of this episode, pretty much, I mean, at one point I will go and get some ice for our ship, but for the rest of the episode we're basically busy starting to lay down foundations of our base, because you know, essentially I do want to make this space a bit of a more refined compared to the base that we had in Earth Orbit. Earth Orbit base was basically just like a hodgepodge of utility, and also the last base that we had on it was not really in orbit of anything, but the one that we jumped away from when we went to, what was it, Mars? Yeah, I think so. When we went to the Mars-like planet, that in between station that we had there, that was also pretty much just slapped together, you know, and not really thought out. So I wanted to kind of, you know, started to build a little bit of a better foundation here. So the battery compartment is going to be basically what everything is going to be built upon, because it's like the lowest level here. And then on top of that, we'll, you know, start to build up more and more things, essentially. But yeah, it will take shape soon enough here. Also, one more little thing that I want to talk about real quick. Basically, when this episode releases, I'm gonna be on vacation pretty much. I think this will probably release on Monday if I planned this correctly. So from Monday on, I'm actually on vacation, and I'm still gonna be at home for a day or two, but then on Wednesday I'm going away. I'm going to visit a festival in Germany, a music festival. So it's not Wacken open air this time around. It's called Summer Breeze. It's a little bit smaller, and that's going to be this week. So the episodes of this week are going to be like re-recorded, if that makes any sense. So this week, if you think that it's weird that I'm doing stuff even though you suggested something else in the comments, that's because it's pre-recorded pretty much and not recorded in a chronologically like smart order, if that makes any sense. But yeah, it's gonna be pretty fun, I think, going to like a little bit of a different festival, because I'm basically just used to walking over there. I never went to another festival as like an open air, as far as I'm aware. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting, because Wacken is, if you've never been, it's massive. It's like 80,000 people or something, 90,000 people, something like that. And this year, not this year, I think I saw a figure this year, because of the bad weather and the rain, they could only let like 30,000 people on. The rest basically had no chance to get in. I mean, most people didn't even have a chance to freaking get there in the first place because of that terrible weather and all the roads being basically swamped. But yeah, it's gonna be interesting. So I think right here I'm trying to find ice, because we've turned off the engines now that consume hydrogen on our small ship, but the problem is that we are very much down on hydrogen, like on 25% hydrogen in the tanks, and that's not a comfortable number to cruise around with. So I'm trying to find where exactly our ice is so that I can get... Well, first I thought I will just put a few cubes of ice into the engine and that will be enough, but honestly it needs a lot more than that. It needs to start fill up the whole freaking tank, which is, it's a longer like process to do so, but you know, we need to start somewhere. So yeah, just jumping back. Also, I'm not sure if I ever talked about this, but there's another game that I'm waiting to play right now, actually. Essentially, Baldur's Gate 3 released like last week, I think. And it's essentially, if you've seen my Divinity Original Sins 2 playthrough, that's Baldur's Gate 3 is essentially, well, I think it's from the same studio, so it's very much the same kind of game, like an RPG kind of thing. And right now I'm actually waiting to play it. So I think the thing is that my first playthrough is actually going to be a group playthrough, so we're waiting to play this as a group. Essentially my brother and two friends are gonna play this together. I'm not sure I'm gonna record it because we're communicating in Swiss German anyway, so it's pretty hard to understand, I'm sure. But yeah, that's something I'm waiting for. But I think that game has a lot of replay value, so that might be something that will crop up eventually on this channel as well, depending. But I'm pretty sure it's a great game. From all I've heard, it's pretty good. I've tried to stay spoiler-free. I know, like, it was early access for years, and I completely basically kept my hands off of it and didn't look at any trailers, didn't look at any gameplay videos, nothing. I wanted to, you know, I do this actually often. I want to be, you know, get that first expression kind of thing, and that sometimes is ruined if you binge watch like videos of other people playing it, because then you already get like a set thing in your mind how it's gonna be, and it just doesn't feel true anymore if you play it the first time. And also, sometimes it's nice to not know what you're doing. Sometimes I feel games today forget this kind of feeling. You know, that players are allowed to sometimes not know what they're doing. You know, there's games that just hold your hand every step of the way, because they cannot like conceive that a player would like to be lost at one point. And I think sometimes that's fine, you know, just to struggle a little bit and, you know, try to figure out how things go. I mean, yeah, sometimes it can be frustrating if a game gives you like no hints whatsoever, and you essentially have to resort to a wiki to get further. That's not good as well. But there's like a happy medium in between where figuring stuff out for yourself and the game having basically mechanics and systems to naturally teach you what to do and how to react to things. So yeah. Anyway, as you can see, we just gorged ourselves on ice right there. Our red light indicator for the full tanks is still working. Very happy with that. So now we're just gonna put this baby back, and it will continually over, well, the time, the rest of the episode, and probably also part of next episode, it will just be churning out hydrogen for the most part. So yeah. I always have to kind of be careful that I don't ram myself into the freaking solar panels here. I can totally see myself just freaking nailing one of these lower solar panels over there. I mean, come on. Alright. So yeah, bound, as you will see in a second here, once we've landed. And basically, for the rest of this, we are working on that lower battery chamber, and not just you know, putting the battery chamber together, but also starting to basically plan out the rest of this whole base structure, or at least the start of this base structure we're gonna put together. And I have some like basic ideas how this is gonna go. So as you can see here, the lower chamber is just the batteries. We have options there to put down more batteries, you know, just to put a few of those on top and give us even more energy resource, but so far this is actually more than enough. And then there's this little chamber thing that I'm working on right now. And to my mind, that should be something like a control chamber or something like that, basically where there's a bit of monitoring equipment when it comes to energy. We can solve that, I'm pretty sure, with some Audo LCD scripts that will give us a little bit of information, essentially. And then here what I'm doing is I'm essentially deciding where the next chamber is going to be, and it's going to be straight above, like this. And it's going to be accessible through ladder. Because I think we don't need to go regularly down to the, you know, the battery chamber. That's not something that you will do regularly. It's more like a maintenance thing. So access via ladder is going to be fine, you know, when it comes to this. So essentially, above this chamber here, there's going to be, you know, the main base. But this is actually, it's going to be, yeah, like a control room / observation decks. As you see later on, I'll plant down some windows as well, so we can look into the battery chamber. You know, I don't, you know, in like in-game terms, it doesn't benefit you in any way to have something like this, obviously, because why would you have to like visually look into this room? You can get all the information that are important, essentially through, you know, the control panels and everything. So yeah, but it's gonna be like a staircase down into there, then 2 windows right next to the entrance, and then the entrance in the middle. Obviously an airlock will have to be somewhere, but it's gonna be somewhere above. So the airlock is gonna be somewhere on the level above this one. I'm not sure exactly where I'm gonna place it, but we obviously also have to think about the whole airflow, of course. We need to essentially drag a conveyor from our base over to here. and generally speaking, just, you know, put stuff down. Okay. So yeah, as you can see, here is the container, and there's also this, essentially, here's where we have to connect into the main system. So we can drag it all the way across here, probably on the ceiling, and then move it into this chamber, and from this chamber we can then move it to the main complex, and that should actually have it hidden away nicely for the most part. That was my laptop, very nice. Right. So let us grab a few basic components so we can drag this conveyor across. And we'll also use some of the blocks that I actually haven't used as much before. We're also going to use the big, what are they called? Big conveyor blocks? No, not conveyor blocks, the big vent blocks that came with the last update, I think. Well, let me just, I'll just have to, you know, just complete the whole room, so to speak. Just get a few plates out of my inventory so I can grind this away. So there's going to be a conveyor here that's going to seal essentially this room and the next one, and then we're just going to drag this conveyor pipe across the room. Then here in the middle we can have this conveyor and then a vent, or rather, which is kind of cool, at this point you can actually have, as you're gonna see in a few minutes, you can have a combination between the conveyor junction and the vent, which is kind of nice. But here we have to first just dig away a bit of the soil so we can actually get towards our main conveyor system. It's always kind of sketchy if you just try to dig through an asteroid like that, because it's so easy to lose your orientation and lose the way where you want it to go. And also you can see there's still a few like bits and pieces here that I haven't even welded because I essentially dug them into the freaking rock. But yeah, it's at least as long as we continue along this line here, we should be for the most part on point. I just have to recognize essentially where to stop and where to break through, which should be like over here. This is where it runs flat. This is where we need to cut in. This is too far, that's where the battery is. And this here. There you can see, there's a conveyor. And first I actually wanted to go into the container block above, but I didn't realize that I dug one block further behind and didn't end up at the container there, but rather at the conveyor right here, which is even better. That makes, you know, a little bit more sense to just go right into the conveyor. So this should connect nicely to this conveyor, and then over here to the other conveyor, and now we can start placing down vents. And that's the cool thing, we can use these new full block vents, which essentially, they save us a block, is what they do, essentially. Because normally you would have to have a junction and then a vent on top of it, which basically then just, you know, kind of grows into the room from above, which is, or from below, depending on how you set it up. But yeah, so then I cut a hole into this floor here, which is essentially how the conveyor is going to run into the room above. So that's going to be some sort of vent like this, for example. We could do that, have a nice little hidden away vent in the floor, and then basically use another air vent right here. So either like this, or have a block one over like that, and then just like a conveyor right here, for example, and then just hide this away behind some metal plates, for example. So that's how I think we're gonna set this up for the most part. Now here come the windows. So I'm deciding to go with these windows because it feels a bit more fortified, a bit more technical. And the thing is, so the way this has to work is we have to place this kind of door down, because the other doors will not like line up with the windows, essentially, or it will leave like weird gaps, and that's definitely something we don't want right now. Then obviously we want our little staircase here, just running down into our battery place. And now we can just start welding. The thing is, it will be a while before we get to some actual good to look at results, you know. At the moment it's still very much in the planning stage and not in a stage where it actually looks functional in any way. But you know, I think it's kind of nice because at the moment we have this kind of three main jobs that we can work on. We can work on essentially the base building from this standpoint that we're doing it right now. This more, let's say, stylized base building where we put rooms down that we feel should be there. Not necessarily functional rooms, but nice looking rooms that just make our base look cool. Then we still can increase the functionality of our base easily. We can put on more solar panels, more refineries, more assemblers, etc. And also, you know, just make it more functional for the most part. And then there's also the exploration aspect that we can still chase after, which is something I kind of think we can do next episode. You know, just go to that bandit station or pirate station and, you know, just take a look at and see what we'll find there. Because I actually haven't explored one of these ever, so that's going to be a new one. I don't think we'll do the same as we did with the ship, so I don't think we'll salvage it completely, because I think we cannot really use a station like that. But maybe we'll find some good material, you know, maybe some components we can grind down for salvage, you know, that have some high-level components in them. But that's a bit of a thing, I think, in Space Engineers. You were very quickly at a point where salvaging is not really not feasible, but not really worth it anymore. You know, because there's not like some components that take so much resource or so many like other components to make. There's not something that is so grind heavy that if you find it via salvaging, you feel like you won. You know, that kind of thing. Most of the time, salvaging feels like it's a waste of time. Because you could much rather just mine and get more out of it in the first place. At least that's how I feel it for it most of the time. But we'll still explore the station and, you know, see what we find. It could be quite interesting. Maybe there's some traps on there on the station, you never know. Maybe there's some warheads set to explode at any given point. That would be kind of funny, not gonna lie. But obviously, I kind of hope that we're not gonna get blown up. But still, would be a possibility. So here I'm just trying to figure out if we still have ice basically left over. If it's consuming the ice as suspected, and it looks like it's doing pretty much as it's supposed to. We're still having about 9 or 10k ice left. That will slowly get consumed over the next minutes, hours, whatever. And we'll slowly start to fill up these hydrogen tanks, hopefully. So I'm just spreading the load a bit onto both, all the hydrogen generators, pretty much. So yeah. Now, let us see. So here I'm trying to figure out if actually the generators on the ship are trying to fill up the hydrogen tank on our base. But I think if you set it up correctly, it should probably only work in one way for the most part. You can like set these things up so you can draw, I think it's called stockpiling. So if you essentially activate that, it should draw from all the other sources. So that's a way you can, for example, use your stations like gas stations. If you then stockpile everything into your ship, that should work for the most part. But you know, if we have generators on our ship anyways, we don't really need to do that, which is kind of nice. But yeah, just fix this corner here. It's kind of bugging me. Sometimes these things are really bugging me when I don't build symmetrical. Even though I could do this at a later point, sometimes stuff like that is really just... it just doesn't sit well with me. I need to kind of fix it and try to make it at least semi, you know, symmetrical. But yeah, I'm actually running over a bit this episode, it feels like. Or at least it looked like. But it's actually not that far. You know, sometimes I manage it to land exactly at 30 minutes. Sometimes I'm over like by half an hour or something. Especially one of the last Cyberpunk episodes actually had to be split in two because I never found a point to save. And at one point I didn't even think about saving because I just wanted to get to the next part. But yeah, I don't know why I actually cut things in half an hour episodes. I really don't know. It doesn't make sense from a algorithm point of view because pretty much I think short videos are favored by the algorithm anyway. But I mean, you know me, I'm not really doing this to chase, I don't know, views, shit like that. I would have to go, you know, about this in a whole different way if I wanted to do so. I probably would have to do shorts at this point. But yeah. So at the moment I just wanted to check if we're still getting energy, and if we look here we actually have fully recharged in 3 hours. Now the day and night cycle is like I think half an hour or so each. So we won't fill these batteries up obviously in 3 hours because there's going to be downtime in between, but we should still basically be able to fill them up bit by bit because I think we are charging more than we are expending at this point during the night time. So it should be charged enough to not get, you know, lose power. But we definitely will expand our solar operations at one point. I'm probably thinking at other points on the asteroid we'll just build similar structures as we did with the one that we have on our main platform. Probably no more oxygen farms because that's not really needed at this point. We have more than enough oxygen, like far more than enough. So we potentially can just get away with, you know, solar panels at this point, and also double solar panels as we did these ones here. There we go, that's the vent fixed up. And if we just go fill up a few more steel plates, we can then dive into that little chamber here and get like a first little look on how it's gonna feel. I kind of have to, you know, grind away that stone in a second because that just looks ugly as hell. But normally if I do that I just destroy the block, or I grind away the block, because if you accidentally hit the block with the drill it's gonna destroy material, which is a bit unfortunate of course. But yeah, so in here I think we're gonna have like at least one control seat with some maybe some LCDs, and then maybe we'll also just, if we can, we'll fit the programmable block that runs the Audo LCD script. We're gonna probably put that in here as well if we can make room for it. We also obviously need room for the ladder, so that has to be calculated in as well. But I think next time we can start with putting a little bit of, you know, decoration in here as well. So yeah, so that means next time we're gonna work on this complex a bit more, and we're also gonna eventually grab our ship and then go over to the ruin. So thank you guys for watching, I'll see you next time, and take care.